What's more valuable, $500,000 in cash or a meal seasoned with the wisdom of a luminary? This is the tantalizing question that sparked the birth of a groundbreaking show, Lunch with the Luminary.
Hey there, Jackie Taylor, and we are back for another amazing show of Lunch with the Luminary, Box Lunch Edition. We are still at InvestFest 2024, where we're having amazing conversations. And this next person I was able to snag to share her wisdom with you. Don't judge a book by its cover is the babe, if you think about it. So she is State Representative Inga Willis. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Now, I mentioned the don't judge a book by its cover because you have an amazing history outside of your political and business strategy work. You started in the music industry.
I did.
As a writer. Tell us a little bit about that.
In high school, well, Atlanta in the 90s, Atlanta's always been a very, very special place. And in the 90s, we had such a strong arts community. And we actually had record labels tangibly here in the city.
Right.
And so it was the first time, I would say early to mid 90s, that you could actually perform work here and get your check cut here. Whereas before you had to go to New York or Los Angeles to get paid. So the presence of a LaFace Records here with LA and Babyface was substantial. And so my 12th grade year in high school, I already had an affinity for writing. I've always loved words. I still do. I just write different things now. I was signed to LaFace through TLC in 94.
So you wrote for TLC?
Yeah, I was a songwriter. I was developed by Lisa Lopez and others. So I was a songwriter and an artist. And when I entered Howard University in the fall of 94, I entered with a recording contract, part of which my parents negotiated that I had to stay on a dean's list in order to keep my deal. So it kept my grades up and I kept my deal. I do have smart parents and I'm thankful for that.
Absolutely. So, okay, the obvious question, how did you transition from the music industry to being such a powerhouse in the political realm?
Well, my father walked across the Edmund Pettus Bridge with John Lewis in Selma, Alabama. Both of my parents worked for federal government. My mother implemented Head Start, which is early childhood education, federal program.
Small program.
Yeah. And so our dinner table conversations like this one allowed me to listen to the changes in policy per administration. So for example, my mother implemented Head Start. My father was a civil rights investigator for housing and urban development. But when new presidents would come in, the funding for their programs would shift. So as a child, I learned how policy was connected to leadership. So as I was pursuing an artistic career, so I was a free spirit, a creative child, left-handed, the whole nine. That was always my undergirding. And so it wasn't until later that connected. Also, I helped people get elected. My
around.
Yes.
Basically in that environment.
Oh, yeah.
Very young.
Yes. Mayor Shirley Franklin in Atlanta, the first woman mayor here, is a woman that helped raise me, another Howard woman. And so that was the first campaign I worked. She taught me how to raise money and about government, and it's just full circle for me to be here in service now.
So it's interesting because in business society with the businesses, we talk about the fact that many of our Black and brown business owners don't have the benefit of a rich uncle, don't have intergenerational, they're first generation entrepreneurs. They don't have that. What do you feel? That's not the case with you. So what do you feel is the difference between having those mentors, those exemplars, being able to sit, like you said, around a meal and hear things and just learn some things through osmosis? What's the difference between that exposure and those who don't have the benefit of those exposures?
Centering service in our lives. I meet a lot of entrepreneurs. I'm on the small business committee for the state, but prior to that, I run my own business until the pandemic, which was another drastic disruption. So my sweet spot is always finding opportunity in crisis, if that makes sense.
Exactly.
So like in the music business, we were disrupted by digital downloads. We lost everything. I used to get paid by how many CDs were purchased at the record store, or if it was played in a jukebox or whatever. Technology took everything, so I began to follow technological trends. I'm a nerd. So, but I think the difference is you're either born into it or you create it, but all of my blessings have come in service to other people. But that was something I learned at home. And I find that a lot of entrepreneurs serve themselves or their individual goals or their individual verticals. And then they can't, even walking around here today, they asked me, how do I get politically connected? I said, have you ever been of service? I knock doors every day. You know, like, so I think that's one of the major differences. Also, I think that education isn't for everybody trope that I've heard from people is a farce.
Formal education.
And not just traditional education, but just seeking greater knowledge and acumen and mastery in spaces. And in so doing, you meet people who are masters, and then you're allowed to sit at their feet. But if you're not in the arena, you're not on the field.
So you're supporting the idea of being a life learner, continuously learning.
For sure.
Throughout.
The world is always changing. So
100%.
you can master something last week and something has changed at the speed of technology and you're no longer the master.
Or relevant.
Right.
So what's interesting is you've spent a lot of time and focus around businesses and supporting businesses.
Yes.
Businesses expanding. What do you see as the top 2 or 3 things that our business owners today need to kind of step up with to be successful? Where do our business?
The consumer experience, I would say, is number one. I mean, that's a multi-layered question, because if you ask like restaurateurs what the biggest hurdle is, and I hear a lot about this on the Small Business Committee, it's the inability to retain staff.
But see, this is why I want to highlight. Thank you for highlighting.
Sure.
So we ask businesses all the time, what do you need to boost your business? What are your barriers? But I'm actually asking the other side of the coin.
Yeah.
What do our businesses need to do to step up? So instead of all the
consumer experience,
that's perfect.
The consumer experience for most of our, let me rephrase that because words matter. The consumer experience for many of our businesses don't meet the mark of excellence. And your consumer experience is your business card. And so I've been successful strictly off referrals. I've never advertised what I do. People find me. Okay?
Because your reputation is good, it's positive, and it precedes you.
Olivia Pope's on Scandal. I'm Olivia Hope. People come to me to fix their campaigns, to get elected, to develop a comprehensive or sustainable strategy to either expand their business model or reimagine their business model. That's my sweet spot. And before a crisis or during one. That makes sense.
So when you talk about the ability to help people navigate crisis,
sure,
that's talking about disruption, which we talk about
at all times.
Being prepared to pivot in the face of disruption. Business owners will constantly ask the CEOs, I'm focused on my business, I'm focused on growing. How do I stay abreast of the trends and what happens so that I'm not behind the 8 ball and I can get ahead of it? What do you think?
That if you don't have the type of vision that can see around corners, then it's just a chapter in a book that you've read. But until you've survived it once or twice, I don't think you fully maxed and succeeded yet. Like, I lost everything through technological disruption. And now, so many people weren't able to bounce back from that. But I also had an education. So I could say, you know what? I lost everything. I got a Howard degree. And with that Howard degree comes a powerful, powerful network. My parents paid a lot of money for, by the grace of God. I can utilize that. So I had another toolbox to go into, right? And so it wasn't like a plan A, plan B. It was my composite. And so the education and elevation went hand in hand for me. And I don't mean that just in a traditional sense, because everybody's not going to go to a Howard or, but I see so many people out of our community that don't take advantage of stable careers right in front of them or workforce solutions right in front of them. So that when something doesn't go your way in business, you have something else to keep you afloat.
Right. To be a foundation.
As you reinvent,
My daughter attended Spelman College.
Howard loves Spelman.
Exactly.
Worth every single dime.
Are you feeling extra invigorated these days? Coming back from DNC and Chicago.
Yes.
And with our Kamala Harris
Madam Vice President.
That's right, that has been reinvigorated. So I think that also speaks to how important, because even here at Business Society, we are actually registering people to vote. We partnered with Rock the Vote, and we're registering people to vote. How can we be somewhere with up to 30,000 people attending in such a critical time as this and not have a conversation about voting?
I don't know.
How do you think that our next president is going to impact businesses and historically under-resourced businesses in the future?
I think that she has a gamut of experience from a policy standpoint, also from a reentry standpoint. So being able to assist people who have made mistakes, as we all have, and provide a reentry program, and there's misinformation around this, by the way, so it's very important for people to seek truth in all things and understand when they're being duped. And so as women rise in power, so does the noise, right? But one of the policies I love of hers the most was a Back on Track program that she implemented when she was in San Francisco. And what it did was, for nonviolent crimes, if you completed a program that she created, there was a reduction in sentencing, which then allowed for people to re-enter the workforce without that blemish or that stain that stayed with you forever. So there's a rumor out, locked up all these black men, 1,100, blah, blah, blah. No, it was only like 45. And they had other charges or didn't complete the program. So that's what I'm here for. So when you have feminine energy and leadership, which is powerful, it's a balance for women. It's powerful, yet empathetic, right? It allows for an environment that cultivates, because that's what women naturally do.
Absolutely.
So as I think about it, as you've asked it, it's probably one of the reasons there have been so many barriers to us ascending in leadership. Because when we do, just like the black community, once you let us in a sport, it can be golf, tennis, whatever, we're going to dominate.
Things will multiply.
By nature. So I think that for businesses, she's already proven that. She had a round table of black men, entrepreneurs, come to the White House. It wasn't heavily publicized, but they were there. Not only did they come to the White House and talk to her about their small businesses, she then turned around and gave grants to these businesses. So the receipts are there, and I believe you can judge people by their fruit. None of us are perfect leaders. None of us are perfect owners. But I don't think that women could do any more damage than has been done since the beginning of formal political leadership led by men that has excluded us and our men at most times. So I'm extremely confident about the future.
And I'm so glad that you're so specific and clear about that, because what we talk to business owners about is you can't separate politics from your day-to-day business, because the success of your business is dependent upon who is in that office.
Yes.
Who is in Congress, what resolutions, what laws are passed, what resolutions are presented and what laws are passed. You have to be in the know. You have to understand the positions, because that can directly impact.
But I think that's that gap that we're talking about. I look at many first-generation entrepreneurs, who are hyper-focused, because it is all-consuming when you're building a business and you're getting it out the mud, right? The failure to see policy in politics. Blackness is political. Getting up every day and walking out of your door, getting in your car and hoping you make it home is rooted in policy and politics. And so separating ourselves from that, I don't talk politics, I don't do this and I don't do that. We need you to, because who are you to come to the table and then say, we don't have this and we don't have that, when everything they're asking for is policy driven, including funding, including access, including all of those things. So it was never disconnected. So I just strive to exude the example of the connectivity of all things. And in my life, my blessings have come in service, but policy drives progress. And so the disconnection of our founders from what we have access to, it will never catch up.
It's going to have downstream impacts and implications that we do not want to see.
Yes.
So you know what I find? You talked about service.
Sure.
People who commit their lives and their time to service very rarely take the time to stop, to breathe, to focus, to be in the moment. People are constantly taking as opposed to. So
Sure.
How do you?
I go on vacation.
Girl after my own.
I go swimming.
Where we going? Where we going?
I am a summer baby. I was born in June.
Okay.
In Atlanta, unbeknownst to many people, we had competitive swimming teams. And so you grow up swimming here. I didn't know that swimming was something that a lot of our communities weren't exposed to until I got to college in DC. We had to take swimming at Howard. We learned our alma mater treading water, right? So, which pledged everything at Howard. That's a whole nother story. But water brings me peace. My mother's from Savannah, Georgia. We Geechee people. So water is my love language.
Yeah.
And Atlanta's landlocked. So as often as I can, I have to get to the ocean. I got to get in it.
I recommend Turks.
I love Turks. It's very calm water.
Blue water.
I did in a grill last summer. I spent a lot of time. I was in South Africa for a year and a half. Like I've been.
Is that for pleasure, for work, both?
Both. Well, work, but I enjoyed it.
Right.
So I created business in places I wanted to go.
How often do you travel so that you have that release? Are you deliberate
Since
about
I've been in public office, it's less because I've been getting acclimated to what this new arena is like and how I can be successful in it. I now have my sea legs under me, so I can move around a bit more. And in state legislature, our session, my term is 2 years, but our session itself, top of January to the end of March. So the rest of my time is spent in the community, so I have a bit more flexibility.
Gotcha.
So I'm just getting back to my travels now, but to relax me, just sometimes it's just solitude, quiet, not talking at all.
Well, we talk for a living.
So sometimes I just like to be quiet.
Woman after my own heart.
You know?
I'm telling you, I can relate 110%.
I'm an only child, so solitude doesn't bother me.
Okay, I'm not an only child, but sometimes I wish I was because.
My mother's only.
So, if you had 3 things that you could share with business owners watching or listening to this on what they can do to grow and scale their business exponentially, what would those 3 things be?
Number 1 is grow and scale yourself. I can't emphasize that enough. And run your race, you know? And I'll use Madam Vice President as an example, if I may. I was just sharing this with one of my friends here. It's very important, and she said this last night in her acceptance speech, it's very important to define how you see yourself, not let others define it for you. And so a woman of ambition, you know, is often stifled or suggested to be stifled, particularly in coupling, okay? So you would think that Attorney General would be enough, or someone would say, you, the United States Senator. No, she saw herself as president.
And it's not for other people to decide.
And guess where she is now?
That's right.
The most powerful woman in the world. Commander-in-Chief is a Howard woman, just like us, because she saw herself there. So in business, if you take that model, right, and you place it in your business, decide where do you see your business going, what is the desired outcome, and how do you reverse engineer it? Part of that is I'm a voracious reader, and I like turning the actual pages. I can't tell you how many people came up to me today and asked me things they should have been typing into Google. Questions like, Representative Willis, are there any programs in Georgia that support, you know, businesses or real estate? And I'm like, yes, you know, Invest Atlanta, 1, 2, 3, but that could have been typed into a search bar, you know? So I believe that in order to grow your business and sustain it, you have to be able to not only see around corners, but study and follow the trends, because the disruption will occur, and the pandemic showed us that.
Absolutely.
Sometimes it's a natural disaster. Sometimes it is an economic collapse. Sometimes it's both.
But the only
Sometimes
thing
it's
that's
tech disruption.
Is that it's disruption. And so
Yes.
you have to position yourself to be in a position to pivot at any given
Sure.
100%.
So those would be some of my suggestions. And then the other one would be to partner well in life, love, and business. And you know, if you are the smartest person on your team, you're not smart at all. You know, and I'm blessed to be surrounded by people much smarter, prettier, brighter than me, that I can then observe and sharpen against, as opposed to, there's a lot of boss talk in this culture. I'll be a boss, I'll be a boss. And everybody's a boss till it's time to make payroll. I don't aspire to be a boss. I aspire to be a leader. And leaders inspire and develop other leaders. Bosses employ people and make payroll. That's not my desire. So I think we are doing ourselves a disservice in the culture of entrepreneurship about the way we utilize words that greatly matter. And so people who don't feel powerful people who've never felt power or felt confident in themselves, they seek to dominate others. They only succeed on top of somebody's neck. And we're seeing that politically right now. Whereas leaders inspire other leaders. And so that's what I seek to inspire in young women and girls and young men, and to make sure that I'm around. So be an inspiration, right? Always ask yourself, who's speaking? Is this me answering your question, or is it my ego? Am I in my mind, or am I in my heart? Am I offended because you struck a nerve with me? I always want to make sure I'm responding in the right voice, and political service has really made that mandatory for me, because I can easily respond, strong personality like him, like, who you? No, I have to say, oh, that's my ego talking. Okay, I can't respond with that.
EQ and emotional intelligence,
which I study all the time.
To be able to even have the discernment to realize, let me self-check.
Sure, at all times. So my question is often like, when they ask me, what's your reading list? What are you reading?
Oh my gosh.
What are you reading? And don't rich dad poor dad me to death.
Don't what?
Don't rich dad poor dad me to death. Like, I wanted to be on your list, but like, I can tell where someone is by what they're reading. And so emotional intelligence has been one of the greatest things I've learned. I have a few books I reread all the time, but EQ.
I was just about to say, I do a lot of rereading also.
What do you reread?
The state of mind that you're in.
Yeah.
When you read it the first time, I read a lot of John Maxwell.
Yeah.
I also, I go back and forth between motivational.
Yeah.
And also some fiction.
Sure.
Because that's also inspirational, and really great writers pull in real.
So who are your favorite fiction writers?
I would say the last, you got the Toni Morrisons of the world.
I got one for you.
Okay, let's hear it.
Octavia Butler.
Okay.
Octavia Butler is our science fiction writer, Black woman, and I'm currently rereading Parable of the Sower. Parable of the Sower was written in the 80s. The Parable of the Sower, written in the 80s, actually starts in July of 2024. So everybody that's into Octavia Butler is rereading Parable of the Sower. Parable of the Sower describes everything that's happening right now, even including a dictatorial leader who is extremely disruptive. So I find, I'm a Zora Neale Hurston lover, another Howard woman.
Right.
But Octavia Butler, I think, is under-amplified, under-recognized, and so prolific. She was a seer. So it's science fiction, but it's current. And I have a first edition collection of hers that I continue to build.
We are going to post that and make it available.
Please do.
I'm going to definitely take a look at it.
Please do.
Have you read Outwitting the Devil?
No.
When you talk about a dictatorial leader, it's written centuries ago, but speaks to a lot of what we see now. And we see that a lot. You're a voracious reader.
Sure.
So, there's so many parallels between looking at 18th century,
Yeah.
19th century, periodicals and books, and seeing the exact parallel to what we're going through.
Because everything is cyclical.
Absolutely.
But I really, when you said fiction, I used to be such a serious person. I only read like business books. I didn't really like fiction.
I purposely was deliberate about balancing what I was consuming.
It's so very important. So what are we reading? It's business advice.
Love it.
And not just self-improvement or how do I make $1 million, but also like what is books were my first passport. So for those who don't have the privilege of travel,
I love it.
books can take you around the world.
That's right. That was what my father used to say all the time.
Same.
This is why we have this table.
That's why I'm
that
sitting
we
at
have
it.
These conversations.
I'm right here.
You are an amazing luminary, and I'm so
As are you.
excited.
Thank you.
But I'm hungry.
Yes.
So I think you should eat.
I love to eat.
Bon appetit.
Okay. All right.